Welcome to Season 3 of the Knack for Business podcast. Over 250 episodes strong, we're here to ignite your entrepreneurial spirit with fresh insights, networking gems, and creative strategies that elevate your game. Are you ready to discover what your knack for business truly is? Your hosts are Bernie Franzgrote from Creative Insight and Wayne Pratt from Motivate You Inc.
Today's topic is unlocking Amazon's potential, winning strategies for small brands. From your perspective, how can you successfully scale your brand and drive more sales on Amazon without wasting time or money on strategies that don't work? Well, that's what our guest is about. So, our guest today is Mike Begg from AMZ Advisors. Mike is an entrepreneur and digital marketing expert specializing in e-commerce with a sharp focus on the Amazon platform. As the co-founder of AMZ Advisors, Mike has been instrumental in generating over $500 million in sales for clients since 2015. Alongside his team, he leads the AMZ courses to educate Amazon sellers and Go Advance, helping brands break into the Latin American markets. Known for his hands-on approach and wealth of experience, Mike thrives on sharing insights about scaling businesses, maximizing sales through Amazon's ecosystem. Mike, welcome. Do you have a favorite quote or saying?
Thank you for having me, Bernie. Wayne, I appreciate it. Do I have a favorite quote? I think one of the classic ones is "The Man in the Arena." That quote is obviously famous. I think that was one of the things that motivated me the most when I was going down the road of entrepreneurship, is being out there and battling, being the one in the arena, taking all the swings, every bad turn that comes your way, and then trying to make the best out of it. So that is probably one of my favorite quotes.
What brought you into this space?
I've been running AMZ Advisors for almost 9 years. Originally, I was working in real estate for a retailer formerly known as Sears. I was redeveloping and selling off their real estate assets. There is money to keep the company going. One of the deals that came across my desk was from Amazon offering to buy a Sears store at a mall. And it kind of crossed my mind, why would Amazon, the online bookstore, want to buy a space in a mall? What I found out is they were turning that space into a warehouse. And then from there, I started snowballing. I figured out you could sell products online. Ebooks was the first thing I started selling because there's virtually no capital you need to put down. You just need to create the book and you earn royalties on it forever. Then from there, we started doing, myself and a couple of friends started doing what's called retail arbitrage, buying stuff in the local Walmart, turning around and selling it on Amazon. Finally, we started importing products from China, building our own brands and launching those brands specifically on Amazon. We figured out that we were really good on the marketing side, not so great on the inventory management and order management side. So we shifted our knowledge and our focus to building an agency around how do we help people market and sell more on Amazon. And that's what AMZ Advisors is today.
Wow, that's quite the run. Like, what were your first big hurdles in doing that?
That's a good one. I think the first big hurdle that we had was just figuring out how to get clients. I mean, that's generally one of the problems that most brands have, or most companies have when they're starting out. For us, we were really fortunate. We started at a time where Amazon was growing quickly. This was back in about 2015. And there was a lot of demand for the services, but not a lot of companies or people out there that knew how to market or sell on Amazon. And just out of pure luck, we ended up connecting with some guy on Upwork, which is a freelance platform. I think back then it was called Odesk. We partnered with him, and he was working with a very large brand out of Minnesota and another very large brand out of California. We essentially became his Amazon marketing arm. But we were working with multi-billion-dollar brands off the start, which gave us a lot of learning experience, learning how to manage all that advertising budget and grow those sales, but also how to deal with those types of clients. And then from there, things just kind of kept growing.
Mike, I have a book on Amazon, and I get those lovely letters every month that said, "You made nothing. We owe you nothing. Have a nice day." Getting a book up is both challenging and exciting, but what turns a book to sell your mother into a bestseller?
That's a good one. I mean, it all comes down to marketing. When you look at books outside of Amazon, that's how authors become popular or have high sales volume. They build a great marketing engine behind them. Obviously, the quality of the book's important. What you're writing has to be providing value to the end consumer. But at the end of the day, you're just marketing yourself in a different way. When we see people trying to arbitrage an opportunity, it's like, hey, I'm going to create a book on this topic. I'm going to run and see if people buy it. That's one thing. If you're trying to establish personal expertise in an area or authority on a specific topic, That's really when you need to go a lot deeper. And that's where most brands fail when it comes to products as well, is that they think, I'm just going to throw this book or this product up on Amazon, it's going to start selling, and that's all I have to worry about. No, if you're actually trying to build something for the future, there's a lot of marketing that needs to happen in addition to just putting the product up there. And having that expectation that just putting it up there is the wrong approach.
You started this process, you had a couple of buds with you to help you establish this. Has that been, is it better, from your opinion, to have friends join you, or is that, because sometimes in business you have to make a hard decision, like, so good at that, or man, you're really good at that, but you're not in that position. How do you guys sort that out so that, everything's tweaked so that, you're on course, or better yet, but you realize none of you is an accountant, and now we need an accountant, someone's doing accounting and it's not working out so well.
Fortunately, I mean, there's obviously pluses and minuses here. Fortunately, the relationship that we all have is very direct and very honest. We don't take things very personally. When someone's being told they're not good at something and two people are telling them, it generally means they're not good at that thing. So we're pretty receptive from that standpoint. The other thing that helped a lot is that we all had different backgrounds. For example, my background was more on the real estate side, a lot more on finance, a lot more on strategy. My partner, Steve, he was 100% in sales. He was the one out there comfortable selling whatever you put in front of him. My friend Rob was working in project management, so he was much more comfortable in the operations and making sure tasks or projects were moving along and getting done. So I think it was twofold. One, that relationship helps a lot. The split between responsibilities between each partner helped a lot to start with, but I really don't know that I would recommend it to most people. Heard countless stories of people trying to start businesses with friends, and I have tried to start other businesses with friends and I've seen them fail. I think it really just depends on the people that you are partnering with.
Do you do a lot of paper between you guys just to make sure that, like, the one thing I was taught early on was that a board member, he says, it's far better to have everything done in writing now while everybody's still smiling till the heat of the moment rolls in, right? And then it's like, no one wants to sign anything at that point. They're all just ornery.
Yeah, that was a piece of advice I got from a good friend as well. He had a background in private equity. He had seen all types of things in businesses and all types of challenges that come along. He recommended working with an attorney to iron out some of these details ahead of time. And I do highly recommend that. I mean, it's kind of the difference between the carrot and the stick. Obviously, we're trying to get the business going in the right direction. The carrot is obviously making more money. But if people aren't pulling their weight, we have the stick of like, hey, this is what it says in the contract. So, it does benefit to have all that ironed out ahead of time.
Mike, one thing that interests me is I love hearing about success stories and horror stories. When did you get to try to meet the people face to face? And what worked brilliantly and what was disastrous?
Well, frankly, we've never met anyone face to face. It's the great thing about our business is it's all online. I think there's been plenty of things that we've made mistakes on that have failed horribly, lots of things that have been very successful. One clear example of something that we failed horribly on was in the initial hiring processes when we were bringing in employees, we didn't focus so much on culture. And that was a big learning lesson for us. We focused on people that did a good job and assumed that everyone working together that did a good job would iron out and work out smoothly. We had an office here in the building I'm in. It was a small office at the time. It was only maybe about 6 people. And we also have co-working spaces throughout the building. There was only one person that wanted to work in the office. Nobody else wanted to work in the office. And I couldn't figure out why. I was like, what's the point of this office? The reality was they didn't like being in the same room as one of the other employees because his attitude was negative, because of the way he joked about things. He was making everyone else uncomfortable. It's interesting when you transition from being that one-off entrepreneur, consultant, or advisor to actually becoming a business and having to consider more of these things. It's like, what's the culture I want to build? Who are the type of people I want to have in here? What do I do when people don't fit in? That was a tough learning lesson for us. Another tough learning lesson is you hire people early on that help you a lot, and then it's hard to move on from them in the future. We made a really good hire. He was our first employee. Great guy, loved working with him, but he just didn't have the vision to go out and accomplish things proactively. Everything was reactive. It was getting to a point where we couldn't have that type of person in the business. We needed someone who was looking forward instead of just looking backwards. That was a tough decision because we dragged him along. We tried to fit him into different roles to make something work, and it just didn't work. At some point, we had to let him go. It's important to just keep in mind that it's a business. It's going to evolve. The needs of the people that you're going to have in the company is going to change over time as well. And you can't get, I guess, overly nostalgic of how things worked in the past.
I can see that. If you're a business that's starting up going, listen, I think I want to sell some stuff on Amazon. What should you have prepped? Are you responsible for warranties? So if I buy a product, say, for example, brake pads, and I buy them from a distributor and I sell them, what should I have in place? How do you handle returns? How do you handle warranties? What's that all look like in the Amazon universe?
It can definitely get messy. And one of the things you can choose to do or not to do is offer warranties on the platform. There's no requirement to do that, which is great. When it comes to fulfillment and returns, using Amazon's own fulfillment networks are extremely powerful for helping with that. Amazon, it's called Fulfillment by Amazon. And essentially what you do is send your product there. Amazon sells the product. Every time there's an order, the Amazon warehouse ships out the unit to the end consumer, and vice versa. If there's a refund, the consumer will send that unit back to Amazon. So from an operational standpoint, it's a great resource to help you at least get started. So that's probably one of the big challenges. The other great thing about it is that when you do the FBA program, Amazon will handle customer service, which is also a big weight off your back. Anytime there's a complaint or an issue, they're going to Amazon, they're not coming to you. So those are some of the benefits of it. The main things you got to consider is that your costs are going to be higher. Amazon charges fees for commissions, a referral commission essentially for selling on the platform, fees for the fulfillment. So you got to make sure that you have the right margin, you understand what your fees are, or otherwise you're just going to be burning through cash. And that's not even considering the cost of advertising. So understanding your financials is probably the key.
Do they also handle the advertising too, or promotion? I noticed, oddly enough, I'm a client of Amazon. Like, who isn't, right? Now, every once in a while, you go through. I'm looking for whatever. It could be a dog bed, or it could be a piece of tech hardware. And all of a sudden, I get sponsored links showing up, and I'm like, interesting. Now, how do I know who's better, right? And so, do they handle that piece?
So you bring up a couple of good points there. Amazon has an advertising platform where you can choose to run ads. There's different types of ads you can run. You can run what's called an automatic ad, which is essentially Amazon says, hey, your product's relevant for these keywords, and then places it wherever. Or you can bid on specific keywords and show up that way. That's how the platform handles itself. You also brought up, how do I know which product's good or which product's not good? And reviews is the way that you essentially know that. And reviews has a massive impact on how products actually convert on the Amazon platform. Products at the top of product result pages are going to sell more. They're going to get more reviews over time. It's very difficult to displace those. And that's where ads can come in very helpful. If you have good reviews, if you have a good product, that's the fundamental. Your ads can show up right next to a product that has 15,000 reviews or 20,000 reviews. There's still a good chance the consumer is going to click on that. But if your product is showing up first in results, it also appears to them that your product might be good. So it's a way to compete with brands that are already established on the platform. If you throw your product up, you're not going to get sales. You need to be putting your product in the right place with advertisements and marketing to make sure the consumers are actually finding it and buying it.
It sounds like an SEO optimization thing.
In a way, it is. When we think of Google, Google will rank based on a variety of different factors like keyword density, backlinks, all that type of stuff. Amazon will index products based on product conversions, how much your product is purchased when a consumer comes to the product detail page, and how long your product's been selling on Amazon. Those are two of the main factors. When you control those factors is where you really start moving your product up. It's less of a traditional Google SEO. It's very specific to Amazon.
One thing that interests me is there's no question that Amazon is the 800-pound gorilla. Some people were very naive and weren't paying enough attention, but how do you work against a company that's 100 times your size if they have opinion that's not yours?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. That's definitely one of the challenges. But I think one of the things we've seen over time is that disruptor brands are able to move into spaces and take over from established brands. And we've done that time and time again. There's a very good case study from a brand a few years ago called Liquid Death. And Liquid Death sells canned sparkling water or mineral water. How did they get to the top over other brands that are more established like Perrier, San Pellegrino? What they did was unique in that all of their marketing efforts were focused on sending traffic to Amazon. Amazon is where about 60 to 70% of all online searches start. So a consumer's looking for a product, you need to be on Amazon for them to find it. And what they did was essentially they said, hey, all of our marketing efforts is going to push people to Amazon. So their website, all of their checkouts went to Amazon, all the SEO work, all their paid ads on their website and the paid ads on Amazon were all pushing people to go to Amazon to buy the product. They became the number one product on Amazon and they took over the disruptor brands. Now that's a unique marketing tactic that they took advantage of to get to number one. You kind of have to get a little creative when you're working against a major brand on how you disrupt them. And pricing is generally not the way you're going to win. Usually these big companies can undercut your price on pretty much everything, but creativity when it comes to how you brand your product, how you drive traffic to your product, how you acquire customers, what customers think about your products, and how you improve your product is the way that you can really start becoming a disruptor brand and actually beat some of these larger brands out there.
Right now, it sounds we've talked about hard products like, I want to buy a mouse for my computer. What I do is I'll open up the Amazon page, then I'll open up a Best Buy page, and then I'll open up another page that, sells similar product. Do you find that Amazon stays competitive, or is that you, the seller, have to be mindful of the store down the street that does online sales, which might ship here in Canada through Canada Post or Purolator, right? There's workarounds for everything, especially at Christmas time. Is there a guide map for the person, or does Amazon provide, oh, by the way, your product, great product, other people are selling it, but you're selling it too high and it's not going to work out well? Do they give you feedback?
They do. They won't actively tell you that. You have to monitor a lot of your metrics to see that. There's one metric called the buy box percentage. The buy box is essentially when you go to an Amazon detail page, on the right-hand side, there's generally an option to buy now or add to cart. That product or that seller is considered the one winning the buy box. If you scroll down below that buy button, you'll generally see this offer is available from 10 other sellers. Those 10 other sellers do not have the buy box. If you are the brand owner and you don't have the buy box, that's a big problem. That means that you have a leak in your supply chain and that someone is undercutting your pricing on Amazon. And that's a major issue that you're going to have to figure out. Some of the ways that we handle that is with minimum advertised pricing requirements. And other instances that are a little bit more complicated, you may need to serialize your products to know exactly where the leak is coming from within your supply chain. One of the main things right there. The other one that can become a big problem is that when you're selling in multiple places, at least in the US, Amazon will price match to other websites. They will look up your product on Walmart, Target, eBay, whatever other platforms, Wayfair, like they will find it anywhere. And if your product is cheaper on those other platforms than Amazon, they will suppress your listing and your product won't show up in search results. And that's a very controversial practice. Another big issue is really not having the right control in their supply chain and understanding who's selling their product and for what prices.
One thing that interests me is with a name like your company that has the word advisors in it, obviously one of the things you provide is guide rails. So a person doesn't want to do something terribly stupid or learn the hard way. What actually is the process of how you advise the customer?
Well, that's a good question. We do the best we can. At the end of the day, if the client doesn't want to listen, they don't want to listen. But we have a variety of case studies. We have 9 years of experience at this point. We have examples we can point to and identify where they're going down the wrong way. For example, we just had a conversation today about a client that wanted to split up a variation to see how the ads performed on each variation individually. What we've seen is that the sales drop because the reviews get split between the listings, the traffic gets decreased. There's a variety of reasons, but in general, it's not a good thing. We tell them that, and we told them that multiple times, and they still wanted to do it. So at the end of the day, we back it up with evidence and what we've done before. If we haven't done it before, it's more like hypothetically, what do we think is going to happen? And then at the end of the day, it's up to the client. We can only do so much.
I noticed that right now we've been talking about actual hard assets, a mouse, a dog bed, whatever the case may be. And we've also touched on books, and then there's music. So is this another, of course, there's also Alexa, right? And there are other services. Are you just dealing with the product and any SaaS sales that are coming through Amazon? Or are you also engaged in the lyrical side and becoming a bard?
Oh, no, I am not musically inclined, let's say. We mainly focus on physical products. The other area that we focus on a lot is Amazon's demand side programmatic platform. There are instances where we run ads for service companies using Amazon's network. A good example of this is one client who sells a product that is for cleaning. They also offer cleaning services. The product is kind of a lead-in for their cleaning service. So what we do is we acquire the customers by buying the product, and then we retarget them with service ads on the DSP side to get them to buy the service. No, we really don't go there.
What's DSP, by the way?
That's a good question. No, it's a demand side. I believe it's demand side programmatic or demand side platform or demand side publishing. The P is the one I always forget, but essentially it's all display ads. We can run ads on other websites outside of Amazon. We can run display ads on Amazon. We can run video ads on Amazon Prime, Twitch, video ads on other third-party ad networks. So it essentially allows us to reach well beyond Amazon itself and start advertising in other places.
Mike, something I get excited about is the Kindle, the ebook. Has the ebook changed the market from what you've seen? Are people actually reading on the readers, or is it still dead trees being shipped? Where's your take on the ebook?
The ebook market is significant. I think a lot of it comes down to personal preference, though. The challenge has been over the past few years that so many people have found out that you can self-publish ebooks. They put out a lot of junk, and it's really tough to distinguish what's good from what's bad. When I'm looking for books online on Amazon, I tend to go for books that are published by a different publisher, not self-published. And I think that's unfortunately one of the unintended consequences of people trying to make money online. The idea of people publishing their books to begin with was a great idea. I just think that it hasn't been executed the way it should have been. So yeah, I can only speak for myself, I guess, in this instance, but generally I tend to think that physical hard copy books, whether it be paperback or hardback, are generally what's purchased more frequently than ebooks.
So if somebody says, hey, listen, I either have a product, I made the product, or I'm acquiring the product from a distributor, or I'm going overseas, potentially from China or the Far East.
Mm-hmm.
How long does that take to kind of ramp things up? Like from have the epiphany that, hey, other people will probably like it, so I like it because I use it. And apparently there's a lot of us out there that use stuff. How long does it take? And you know, what type of research should you do before you pull the trigger going, here we go?
I think the first thing you need to look at is getting a third-party research tool for Amazon. There's a lot of good research tools out there. I mean, there's a million almost. It's called Jungle Scout's one we use, ZonGuru is one we use, Helium 10 we use, Merchant Spring. There's a variety of different tools out there, but all of these tools can give you really good insights. What customers are searching for, what price points are converting the best, which products are performing the best, what categories. Just takes time. When we launched our products years ago, so I would probably even want to be more thorough now, was we probably spent, I don't know, a month to 2 months just researching products, finding the category that we thought we wanted to launch in. The first category we launched in was art supplies. The first thing we launched was a marker, and we launched colored pencils, paints, and a variety of other products. We came to that conclusion by doing a lot of research. So that first part, I would expect to take at least a couple months to figure out what you want to sell. From there, go out and do the sourcing. That is pretty easy with Alibaba and other platforms. Be careful though, because as we've learned the hard way from our own experience, Chinese manufacturers don't always play by the rules. We had a great product that was selling well. We reached out to a few different factories, and next thing we know, our product is being sold by someone else at 30% less. We couldn't match the margin, and they pretty much put us out of business. So that's one of the challenges. You really want to be very thorough when you're doing your research into who you want to manufacture with. From there, ordering product samples is important to make sure the quality is where you need it to be. Packaging samples as well. I would generally say you're probably going to expect between at least 6 to 12 months before you successfully launch a brand. And then the actual capital that you probably need to start is probably somewhere in the range of $10,000 to $20,000.
Local regulations. If I'm buying a piece of art, the regulations would be it's not made from uranium or plutonium. But if I'm buying a piece of kit, let's say it goes on a car, it has to match specs, Department of Transport, or here in the province of Ontario, Ministry of Transport. Do government regulations kick in depending where you are as a seller? If I sell from here in Ontario to someone in Kansas, to someone in Mexico, you know, what happens? Like, you know, there's several questions in here. Regulations or across borders.
Yeah, those are very good questions. I would say that Amazon has gotten better at making sure that regulations are enforced, but generally over time, Amazon has play by its own rules. They haven't really been pushed to enforce certain regulations. When they have, they eventually comply with them, but they're not taking responsibility for most of what's sold on their platform. I think I want to say it was maybe 2021. The EU essentially sued them, or, said that they would be liable for products sold on their platform. Ever since then, Amazon started taking more responsibility for making sure the products are in compliance. And now we regularly get compliance checks where it's like, send us our documents to make sure that your products comply. So it is becoming more common. They have started to take it more seriously. But you brought up the cross-border side, and that's where there's still kind of a gray area in that the order is happening in one marketplace and it's being fulfilled in a different country. That's where regulations can get a little out of whack. A good example of this, and since I sell products in Mexico, I know supplements that are registered with the FDA in the US are not necessarily compliant with COFEPRIS in Mexico, which is essentially the FDA equivalent. But if you're sending an individual unit across the border versus sending a pallet, they don't check. So I can send products that are unregulated in Mexico from the US and no one's there to catch it. And it's vice versa. You can do the same thing from Canada to the US, US to Canada. That is kind of still a loophole that has not been closed. And there's probably even more that I'm not aware of, but there's all these types of gray areas, all these types of one-off situations. It's very difficult to control or consider every single one, even for a multi-billion-dollar company.
So if you're doing a cross-border shipping, we ordered a part and it was getting shipped over. Canada Border Services said, oh, there's a code number. Where does this hardware fit into this thing? And I'm like, there's a number? So when you're shipping something across the border, does Amazon do that for you? Do they handle customs and excise and potentially tariffs? Because tariffs starting to get a hot button push there too.
Oh, yeah. Surprisingly, they don't. And I found that out the hard way. I imported the monitor, bought it on Prime Day in the US, trying to get a great deal on it, have it imported to Mexico. And I got hit with an import customs bill that was about the same amount as the price I paid for the product. So my deal just went out the window. They don't get involved. It's really the end consumer. As a Mexican consumer purchasing products from the US, once that product hits Mexico, the end consumer is the one responsible for everything. Amazon doesn't take any accountability from that standpoint. With the HS codes, like the numbers you mentioned, they don't really get involved with that either. A lot of times you need to be able to provide that to the shipping provider. If it's Amazon, they might be able to get it, but then again, they assign whatever code, and whatever code is assigned is what you're, the end consumer, paying to customs to get it through. They're not consulting you about it, I guess, let's put it that way.
30 years ago, when you were researching things and you wanted to buy something, you tried to get a sense of the person knew what they were talking about. Some of it was their comfort level, some of it was their knowledge, some of it was their style. And then we have something like Amazon, which in some ways commoditized it. Is there still a role for knowing your product? And if so, how?
Wow, that's a very tough one. So I think this is generally a trend with online shopping. Since we don't see the product in person, we have to rely on other people's opinions. This is where product reviews on Amazon or on other platforms becomes extremely important. You have to understand what other people think about it. I mean, the star rating alone is useful, but the technique I have is always reading the negative reviews to see what they say. But when we look back, even I think it was maybe 2019, it was very common for sellers to go out and buy reviews from review networks in China, India, wherever, essentially putting up fake reviews on Amazon to make products look better. Amazon started suing everybody and closed that door. They made it part of their terms of service that if you're caught doing this, we're going to throw you off the platform. So at this point, a lot of those fake reviews have been removed and it's more authentic now. I focus specifically on the negative reviews within the past 6 months or so, because a product can change over time. Another common practice that was happening, Chinese sellers were finding old listings on Amazon that didn't have an offer anymore. They were changing those listings to their product. All these old offers had thousands of reviews. It was completely different. You can go on Amazon and find product categories if you go back to reviews like 6 years ago. Let's say you're selling a wallet and it'll be like, oh yeah, this blender works fantastic for my kitchen. It's like, what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So there's been a lot of different ways that people have tried to manipulate the system. Focusing on the most recent reviews is generally the best practice.
Wow. My wallet is not blending the oranges very well. Or my wallet is blending my credit cards really well. Has anybody ever been sought after by local agencies I'm not just talking about litigation, but has an agency showed up on someone's doorstep going, come here, we want to hug you, hold you, and keep you because you've just committed a criminal act, either fraud or anything like that? Or does Amazon have enough safeguards to deter people, even though the best laid plans of mice and men?
I don't know of any specific examples where they've gone after people other than civil litigation. I do know that a few years ago, there was a sting operation for people bribing Amazon employees for information. So it does happen. There's things out there that are unscrupulous, let's say, but I don't know of any firsthand examples myself.
So we'll take a different tack now. So on a good ship of lollipop, you found a product and man, that sells well. I want to scale up. I want to either add generation 2 or iteration 2, or I want to add other products, probably complementary. Let's say if you're in the vitamin market, this is C, but this one's K and this one's D. And meanwhile, we have some magnesium over here. How do you handle the next steps up and going, this is successful, it's working like a charm, I'm going to start growing. And all of a sudden, the match is lit and you're like wildfire.
It's tough, especially with Amazon, because customers aren't very brand loyal. They tend to buy what's at the top of search results pages. Generally, whatever you see at the top must be the best product, right? So consumers usually go that way. Every time you're launching a new product, it's essentially starting from zero. If you've built email lists or marketing off of Amazon, it can be beneficial in that you already have some brand recognition. You can use that to push it towards the new products. One of the ways I recommend starting to scale up is changing the format of your product. Let's say I sell vitamin D in a 60 count bottle. Let me sell it in a 90 count bottle. Let me sell it in a 180 count bottle. Now I have different product SKUs that have different price points. You should be seeing economies of scale from purchasing more vitamin D or the ingredients that go into vitamin D for the manufacturing. You're exposing customers that are already purchasing one product into a larger format, higher price item, which hopefully has a higher margin for you. From there, it's probably expanding lines beyond that. That's generally the way I would approach it because it is so difficult to establish a new product. Even if you're an established brand, we've seen it with large brands where we launch something and it just fails. We're talking multinational brands. Everyone should know this, and it just doesn't take off. Consumers aren't looking for that specific product. They don't know it's available. You have to start all your marketing efforts from zero.
How do you know you need an advisor? How much should they put aside to pick the advisor? And how do they make sure that it's a win-win for you and them? What's the process of getting the client advised?
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of different options there, everything from a freelancer to a consultant to an agency. We tend to fall more into the agency space. I think one of the first things that you need to consider is how you align incentives. We've seen a lot of companies that are incentivized by increasing ad spend. They get paid by their percentage of ad spend or the percentage of ad sales. That just means they are going to game the system to sell, spend as much as possible, which might not be in your best interest down the road. So from an incentive standpoint, you want to make sure you're aligned. Us as an agency, we typically work off a flat retainer as well as a commission based on the ad sales we drive. So that's one way we try to create alignment between the companies, is that we're getting paid for the performance plus, we're covering what our costs are at the base level at least. I think if you are a smaller brand under $1 million, even up to maybe $1.5 million, it's better to focus on freelancers because the cost is lower. The brands we typically work with are doing between 5 to 20 million a year. So I really recommend if you're a smaller company, focusing on using freelancers that can be more cost effective. They can be scaled up or down. They typically bill hourly. So that's one of the benefits from the cost side. And then once you get to a certain point where you have a significant ad budget of 10, 15, 20,000 a month, finding a more sophisticated agency can help from implementing different ad strategies or different marketing strategies that you might not be using right now.
Wow. But and I never knew. I mean, it makes sense that nature that business is out there. Just being an end user of Amazon, I mean, well, they make it super easy, which is nice. And kudos to you for making it run smooth, because that's one of the reasons it's flowing so well. At the end of the day, what are the top things you want people to understand if they want to flip something on Amazon? I've got a product. What are the top few things you want them to understand if they want to fire things up?
So I think the first thing that they need to understand is that you have to have really good content to stand out on Amazon. The product imagery you have is what captures people's attention. When someone sees a product in a search result page, your main image is the one that is leading them to click on the product. The other images on the page are what's helping convert the customers. So focus on all the high level details of what the benefits are of how the product solves problems for the end consumer. That's really how you approach it from the content side. The product review side, that's another interesting piece. There's a couple of programs you can use within Amazon to start your initial reviews. But after that, you want to make sure you're consistently building reviews. And you also want to listen to the reviews. A lot of what the consumers are telling you are areas of opportunity for where you can improve your product or make it better or iterate with a completely different product or different feature that competitors don't have either. So product reviews becomes a really important piece of the product development cycle. And then finally, the platform is pay to play. Advertising is a minimum. You have to be having an ad budget to be able to get your product visible. It doesn't matter, how great your product is. If people don't see it, they can't buy it. And a lot of brands don't want to invest dollars into the Amazon marketing machine. So that's probably the other area where I see a lot of companies failing, is not dedicating a significant ad budget to really start getting traction for their products and their brand.
What type of budget is required for that?
It depends on the category, depends on the type of products. Like supplements, for example, are very expensive. Electronics are very expensive. Other categories are a little bit cheaper. I would generally recommend starting with a budget between $3,000 to $5,000. That's enough to get you a pretty good return. I would expect to make sales off of a $3,000 budget somewhere in the range of $9,000 to $12,000 in revenue. So that's generally what I would recommend as a starting point.
How do we get a hold of you, Mike?
The best way to get in touch with me is directly at my email, mike@amzadvisors.com. You can also reach out to me through amzadvisors.com or find me on LinkedIn. I'm always glad to talk with entrepreneurs and brands looking to grow and scale on the Amazon platform. And if there's any way I can help, feel free to reach out.
I want to say thank you to Mike Begg, my co-host Wayne Pratt, and you, the Knack for Business listeners. If you're going to venture into the Amazon market space as a seller and product mover, Mike is a good contact person. Mike's still a good contact person to have a quick chat with. And if you are at that level of sales, Mike's the right gent. He also focuses on Latin America.
To reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVINSIGH.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people: Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert; Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host; Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space; then Melanie Webber, Bernie's invaluable business partner; and Wayne Pratt from Motive 8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer: please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.